Thank you, Michael. That was very interesting. I'm delighted to know, having climbed Croagh Patrick several times in my youth, that I've got an entry ticket. When I leave this mortal coil, I know him. He'll recognize me, I think, when I knock on the door. So that's useful information. Thank you. It's also, I'd never so really thought of it because I've never met you before, to switch into, here we have a wonderful historic perspective of pilgrimage in Ireland, and so it brings us up to now, and where we might go with the idea of pilgrimage from now into the future. The common definition of pilgrimage is a journey to. And so I'd like to just build up the little time we have left together into looking at broadening the idea, the concept of pilgrimage, widening it, that its efficacy, its power is perhaps now not only in a journey to somewhere, to a holy shrine, to Croagh Patrick, but to see that life itself is a pilgrimage. And if we take that understanding, then we're on pilgrimage right now. In fact, we can never not be on pilgrimage. And if we take that concept, it means that everything we do, if we'll keep that awareness in our minds, when we leave this place, where we go, where we have dinner tonight, what pub we go to for a drink, if our minds were filled with the idea that we're actually on a spiritual journey all the time, suddenly our life potentially gets filled with a profound respect for each other, for the journey, and something other can happen. Because what I also want to do is briefly look at the enormous problems currently facing humanity at this time. And I want to try and build a case in the 15-20 minutes we have, the pilgrimage, and to see it and understand it as a potential doorway or gateway to the one solution that will solve all the myriad problems facing the globe at this time. Big challenge to do that in 20 minutes. We'll see where we go with it.
We're going to be a bit longer actually if you want.
Sorry? Well, maybe that'll be enough. Maybe that'll be enough. So when you meet somebody later on today, tonight, in some other pub, you say, oh, where have you been? Where have you come from? Where have you been? Oh, I've just come from pilgrimage from McCarthy's pub. And then, with whatever time we have left, is to take a look at the Caminos de Santiago as very accessible places of pilgrimage that we can go to kickstart the process. It's interesting that today happens to be St. James's Day, and we have Barbara Chute from Betty Chute, who I met in Santiago. My mother's Betty, so I should remember that. And she met me with my mother. I brought my mother to, not Betty, my mother Betty to Santiago for her 90th birthday, and we all met. Like Betty represents the confraternity of St. James, and we'll be rushing back tomorrow morning for a mass and celebration in St. James's Church at St. James's Gate, which a lot of people don't know. And St. James's Gate is the brewery, the world-famous brewery. The position of the St. James's Gate Brewery is named after the gateway that medieval pilgrims left Ireland to go to St. James, Santiago de Compostela. So I don't know when you get a chance to say something later, but anyway. So this is a very appropriate time to look at the Caminos de Santiago. I don't sense it so much in Westport, but I've come from Dublin. And the Dubliner that I knew and grew up with was a gentler Dublin. The pace of life today, even with the Celtic Tiger losing some of its grip, is the speed with which we live our lives is just so fast. I don't know about you, but I'm often spun out of control. There's a lovely quote: "We are speeding up our lives and working harder in a futile attempt to slow down and enjoy it, and more importantly, to understand it." Imagine coming to the end of our lives and, working through this process and never really taking time to really work out what our purpose here is, where we came from, where we're going to. My sense, many people I speak to, the speed with which we live our lives, there's just no time left to sort of ponder those deeper questions. So, looking at some of these problems facing not just the Western world, not just Ireland, but the whole globe. These are problems of society, breakdown there. We see collapse in religion, in attendance. We see collapses in church. We see collapses in health. We see collapses in economics. We see collapses in ecology and in the environment. The General Secretary of the and head leader of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change suggests that global warming is the biggest weapon of mass destruction we've ever envisaged, far bigger than a nuclear threat. That's the official position. Just released has been a report from the United Nations to state that in the past 12 months, 300,000 people have died and 3 million made homeless directly as a consequence of global warming alone. That's through flood, famine. So we have enormous problems in virtually every area of our life. And what seems to be happening is that we're trying to solve these problems with the same mindset that gave rise to the problems in the first place. And there's a wonderful organization in this sort of, I don't know whether any of you have seen the recent release of the film and the action program called The Age of Stupid. Has anybody actually seen it? Not heard of it either. Okay, well, it's a worldwide launch at the moment. So coming from the age of information, when we have more information, access to more information than ever before, there's a suggestion that we've reached through that into the age of stupid. Now that's beyond the age of ignorance. An age of ignorance is where there's something we need to know and we don't. Here we have a suggestion that we know the dramatic changes we need to make in our lives, but we're not doing them. Both in our orientation and in our view, we're sort of band-aiding. Even look at the situation here in Ireland or anywhere you like to go in the world. There's a big band-aiding program out, and the deeper fundamental shifts and changes, I believe, aren't being addressed. Is the head in the sand sort of situation. The problems are so enormous, gosh, let's just keep busy. If we keep busy, we don't have to think. That's when the idea of pilgrimage comes back in again.